Don't be doing any name calling because everybody's got a phone in their hand and it's going to get back to you whether you meant it or not. And always be nice because you haven't a freaking clue what kind of life even people that work close to you are living at home. You have no idea what shit show they may be going through on a daily basis. So be nice. And the last thing I would think was, as a bottom line, what we all have is our word. And if you give your word, keep your word.
Welcome back to AudioLife, where we tell your story in your voice. I'm excited to continue part 2 of my interview with Michael Dymond. On the last episode, we chatted about his unforgettable childhood growing up in Chatham, Ontario, where he had freedom on the streets, adventures across frozen lakes, and getting into all kinds of trouble. We also discussed how a passion for writing came about through the desire to tell his story, which he has many of. So if you missed that, please go back and listen to Michael Dymond's Storytellers episode 1. And without further ado, let's begin part 2. You made a couple of very interesting points about societal and cultural shifts, particularly one that stuck out for me. We're more connected than we ever are with technology these days, but at the same time, I feel that society and communities are more fractured than ever. And
I agree.
We're perhaps more polarized and divided than we've ever been. And you're right, whether it's right or wrong or whether you believe it or not, but institutions and religions and communities, they used to bring people together. And I do find that there's a lot of, pockets of individuals, and there's nothing wrong with individualism, but sometimes we're losing that connection together that we have with communities. And that's something that I've witnessed even. I'm a little bit younger than you are, but something that I've noticed, in the last 10, 15, 20 years as well. So thank you for sharing that, Michael. And
I was going to wander into that part of it, but I thought that was too big a subject matter to technology right now, because, it's crazy. Everybody's living on their phone and they're not socializing the same way you may have 20 years ago. And that's as good as it is bad. We can't stop moving ahead technologically. We can't, because without change there's death. So you got to move on. But it's a struggle for a lot of people. And I, one that struggles with it significantly. So I thought it was too big a topic to mention. So I avoided the fact that I always have my phone in my hand, which is not a phone anymore. It's so many other things, but whatever.
We actually had a question here, and I was cautious about asking it, but it was how do you feel technology has changed your life or changed society's life? And we can have a brief just a brief comment on it, Michael. We don't need to go too deep, but it is something that I realize is it's both an amazing positive transformation for all of life, but at the same time, it is a double-edged sword. And I'm just curious to your thoughts about that, Michael.
Everything is.
Mm-hmm.
I always start out by thinking it wasn't that long ago, although to me and to you, a long time ago was 50, 60 years, but geologically speaking, it's nothing. But I remember not knowing what the hell was going on across the street or across the river, not that too far from me, in the lives of other people. No clue. Now, with a phone in my hand, I can sneak into somebody's backyard in Afghanistan, in Africa, in Australia, and find out what's going on. And I can Google anything and get some good responses. And I can go on Instagram and TikTok and find out what other people are doing, and Facebook and find out what other people are doing, good or bad. And I think that's wonderful, because it's information is what we need. But I think we're on overload. I don't think lots of people, myself included, are capable of synthesizing all that's going on out there, although AI will help to do that. But let's not get into that. I think overload is a good word. More people know more about the world than most people knew just a few years ago, and it's right here. And I don't think they know what to do with it. And from an entertainment perspective, if you go anywhere, everybody and their brother's on their phone, walking into walls, tripping down steps, sitting in groups of 5 or 6 and not talking because they're on their phone doing something. You're right, double-edged sword. That's as good as it is bad, because the more we know, the better. But what we do with that knowledge is really a challenge. And I guess the influences in your life from outside, professionally and socially, affect decisions you may make around what information you have to deal with. It's overwhelming. It's just stunning and overwhelming. That's that's the only comment. I often say to myself, leave your phone, plug it in, and walk away and leave it there for a few hours. Don't take it with you. I'm not taking it to lunch. I'm not taking it to dinner. We're going for a drive. I'm not taking it. And then all of a sudden you feel like there's something missing because you haven't got your phone stuck in your back pocket. You just get
It's
pulled
a
into it because
bizarre.
that's today. And if you're not in today, you got some issues.
Exactly, and it's kind of a necessity, but it's a bizarre feeling when you forget your phone and you feel like something's missing in your body, and it you're like, what, am I that addicted to my device? I need this. It feels as part of me. I mean,
Yeah.
and I look at my screen time. I have a couple of hours per day screen time, and I was horrified at that. And then I talked with some of my friends, and it's like 9, 10, 11 hours plus that they're occupied on these phones. So I absolutely agree
Yeah.
with you. Information is good. Overwhelming overstimulation of information slash misinformation, dissecting what is fact and fiction. um
Yeah.
that's the double nature of it, and I totally agree with you. I'm both excited about where technology takes us, but also very cautious and wary about our relationship with it. We talk about accuracy of information, and it's great with accessibility, but perhaps you can share some life lessons or wisdom that you've accumulated over the years.
Wow.
We're going deep.
Well, yeah, there's got to be a ton life lessons. Wow. Um, One thing I learned working, because you can go to a workplace and find people that are working there full time, like you may be working there full time, different position, and maybe they're not seen, recognized, accepted, listened to. And I guess one of life lessons in the work field is, regardless of who the person is, if they're working in a particular position in a particular company with you, or maybe they're part of your whole operation, by the very fact that they're there, the very fact that they're there, they need to be recognized and listened to and asked for input, because they're in the same boat, paddling in the same direction, and they're going to live or die based on what collectively happens. So I'm thinking that everybody that works somewhere within your sphere of influence or reference needs to be listened to, recognized, and listened to. I don't care who they are, how lowly they may be in your work field. So don't dismiss anybody. Always communicate with people. I found that over the years. Always communicate. It doesn't really matter if you get to know their name, use their name. And as my grandmother would say, mind your manners. Please, thank you, are very,
Mhm.
very important. Don't be doing any name calling, because everybody's got a phone in their hand and it's going to get back to you whether you meant it or not. And always be nice, because you haven't a freaking clue what kind of life even people that work close to you are living at home. You have no idea what shit show they may be going through on a daily basis. So be nice. And the last thing I would think was, as a bottom line, what we all have is our word. And if you give your word, keep your word. Life
That's
lessons. They're all
that's
that's all a result of my experiences, to realize that you need to talk to people, you need to have nice manners. You don't call names, you call anybody names, and you're nice because you don't know what life they're leaving. And if you're going to give you somebody your word, damn well stick to it. Because if you don't stick to it for a couple of times, you're gone. They don't trust you anymore. I don't care who it is.
I love that succinct truth bombs that you were dropping there, Michael, as I call them, because some of them were incredibly powerful. And it comes down to respect and courtesy. A lot of that,
Yes.
treating people with respect and courtesy. I can't remember who said it, but our words make us different from the animals. But and again, not to go back to the society at the moment, but you know, there's a lot of anonymous keyboard warriors out there where you can say whatever you want to
Wow.
say, and
They're cowards. Yes. Yeah.
there's no accountability for it. So I
None,
believe it.
none.
Maybe that's a bit old fashioned, but I'm the same. If I say something, I mean, I at my very best need to honor that, because without that, I mean,
That's
where's
all
the
you got.
integrity?
That's
Uh
all
huh.
you've got
Uh
is your
huh.
word. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Wow. So those are some powerful lessons you shared with us, Michael. And I'm just curious. You talked a little bit about the martial arts, and I'm hoping I'm not putting that there, but what hobbies or interests have kept you engaged or perhaps resonated with you over the years outside of writing, of course, which I know we you have a strong passion for?
I didn't really play a lot of sports. I was the easier ones were track and field, and I did that in high school and in college. Um, Played a bit of hockey with some guys later in life in those early morning leagues. If we're looking for significant influences, and I can't remember if that was part of your question, but um, I think the martial art of karate has been a significant thing for me in my life because it helped me recognize me because it offers something that a lot of parents want for their kids but can't deal with, and that's discipline. And they don't really know what it means, I don't think, in many cases. Discipline is knowing what you do and what you can't do, and then not going beyond those limits without testing or learning. I think if I was good on my feet and being fairly successful at what I was doing, it started with my getting involved in the martial arts back in 1972, I guess, because it allowed me to discover what I can and can't do. And in the area when I what I can do to improve on that, in the area that I can't do, figure out ways to get out of that can't and into something a little more positive. Um, it was very growth oriented, without question, because your teachers asked you to do some stuff that you did not think you were capable of doing. In most cases, it was physical, but that flowed over into the mental and social side of things. You started to feel a little more confident about yourself, and then you could challenge yourself a little more. That would have been the significant influence in my life. I don't know that that affected or encouraged my writing in any way because I was making notes years before that. But I think it helped me to discover me and then be accepting of me and more confident, as I say, on my feet. And that's sort of upfront skills, standing and talking, sitting and talking. I have to say the martial arts had the greatest positive influence on me. There's one other thing that's been part of my life, and I keep forgetting about it because it's just a part of my life now. Um, there was a piano in the dining room of my house where I was raised in Dover Street that belonged to my grandmother, and she taught my mother how to play the piano from this book that was called the Belak book. And I don't think there was an attempt to teach me because I think they wanted to keep me away from the piano. Because as soon as I discovered I could reach up and hit these keys and then bang on them on the piano, then after I was a moving toddler, then I was banging on those keys. And I've been banging on the keys of piano ever since. My sister took lessons when she was 10 years old, and I keep telling myself, and it's my arrogance, I think, that's suggesting I think this way, that I had a chance to take lessons too, because my grandmother wanted to do something for a family of younger people, that being me and my sister, because the two children she had, they lost one to a childhood disease and the other, my dad, to the war. And she wanted to do something for us. So she said, do you want to take piano lessons to my sister? And I think she asked me if I wanted to take piano lessons too, and she would pay. And I said no, because the last thing I wanted to do was dance around the street carrying a little leather satchel down to the piano teacher's office. Miss Fuster was her name, and then all the boys that I ran the street with, the He-Man Woman Haters Club from Spanky and our gang, they would be making fun of me. So I said, no, I'm not taking lessons. So I didn't take lessons. Now, I may not have had the opportunity, but I keep telling myself I was asked and I said no. But since I started banging on the piano and discovering the white keys, and I discovered the black keys, and they're raised up, and there's 3 and 2, and they're easier to get to, and easier to see, and easier to play. So I taught myself to play, and I've been playing ever since, and I've always had a piano in the house. So that's been my therapy. That's been my go-to therapy for my whole life. When frustrating moments, and I just sit down and run up and down the keyboard. I know there's only 12 keys, but that mean anything, but they come in at different octaves. But if there's a song in my head, I can find it on the keyboard and play it. So that's been my therapy for my whole life. If I was looking to say I had a therapy, so I add that to the discussion.
I think that's beautiful. It almost becomes a meditative escape when you're lost in music, as somebody who's very passionate about music as
Exactly.
well. And you
Exactly.
just get on the keys and everything melts away. So
Yep.
that's really cool, Michael. Thanks for sharing that. How do you spend your days now? You mentioned a little bit about traveling and so on, but what does a typical day look like in your world?
Well, I have a sort of a limited exercise routine that I go through. That came out of the martial arts. It's nothing intense because my body complains the next day if I try to do something too intense. So I do a little bit of that exercise every day. I don't walk as often as I should, but I do. There are some TV shows I like to watch. I'd like to read stuff, but I don't read fiction. I want to be educated or entertained when I read, so I read stuff that provides me with that opportunity. It's not a time filler for me. I love to watch movies, and I watch lots of movies. As I tell my friends and my wife, I'm exceptionally good at doing nothing. So I add the word meditate to that. So I don't have an issue with filling a couple of hours today on that basis. I'm not journaling as much as I used to, but when I'm enthused, I'll sit down and get on the journal stuff. Um, I still train in the martial art on Thursday mornings with friends in London that I've been friends with since 1974. There's not much more than that I can think of. We do travel a fair amount, but that's a typical day.
And now for a word from our sponsors. Ready to share your stories and life philosophy? Or capture those of a parent or grandparent? Or maybe a corporate package is right for you to build connection across your workforce and add value to your clients. Visit audiolife.io today to learn more. Our listeners will get 10% off using discount code GIFT10 and order number AudioLife Podcast. AudioLife, where memories find their voice.
Excellent. You mentioned there you're quite a big movie buff. Give me your top one or two movies, if it's possible.
I like the Denzel Washington did a series of movies called Equalizer, and the Equalizer
Mm.
3 just came out, and I've watched it, and I like that because I don't know, equalizes the word. It deals with dealing with people that seem to be taking advantage of other people unfairly, and this guy comes along and helps them through their struggles. And I guess
Mhm.
maybe that has a connection to everybody's life today. So I like that. I like that series. I like the Bourne series. Same with I read a book. I want to be entertained and I want to learn something. If the movie doesn't provide that, then I'm finding it a little at a loss. Like the Barbie movie came out
Mhm.
recently, and I absolutely loved it because it had a message that I very very much liked. I kind of like musicals, and I do like because the technical abilities today to create stuff that we would never see and that probably doesn't exist. And we're talking about Star Wars and the related. I like those because of what they can do with technology that could make it seem real if we recognize what real might be, in out in space or somewhere else. So I like those kinds of movies. I like to be surprised. I like to be shocked. Although I don't like horror, I find nothing appealing about horror movies at all. I remember going to see The Exorcist many, many years ago, and it scared the hell out of me. And I would never ever see anything like that. That's not entertaining. It's based on a scare factor and stuff that really doesn't exist, but it's interesting. And if I like a movie, I'll watch it 30 times. If I like
Oh,
a
you're
movie,
one of
I'll
those
watch it
guys.
over and over and over again.
Uh-huh. I'm a bit like that myself. If I find a movie that I love, I could watch it. Like, it becomes like a stalwart of my viewing.
Like,
Much to the dismay of some of my friends who want to always watch something new and different. Um, So I love that. I love that, and quite a wide range of diversity there. You know, you've got your action, you've got your drama, you had like comedy there, modern films and Barbie and so on, movies with a message. And like yourself, I'm not too interested in horror.
No, not
So
at all.
as we getting closer towards the end of our podcast, I'm just curious, reflecting back or looking back, is there anything you would do differently in your life or approach things a little bit differently than you did?
Well, I'd be the first one to tell anybody that don't have any regrets. When it's time for you to go lay on your deathbed, don't go there with any regrets. So I can look back and say things that relate to having regrets. I wish I would have had more time with my daughter when she was young. That's something that I would look back on and like to do over again. I wished I'd had that opportunity to take piano lessons, but I don't think I did. And I think if I'd had the opportunity, I probably wouldn't have taken it, but I should have. And I would have, if I'd had the opportunity. When I finished the 2-year diploma program at Guelph, I started to go back to university and take courses because I wanted to degree myself in either communications and sociology, but I didn't continue. And the reason I didn't continue isn't bad because I learned a lot. My brother decided he wanted to do something with me. So we opened a pizza business and ran this takeout and delivery pizza business for 5 years. And once I got into that with him, I still worked full time in my full time job. I quit going to school. I wish I had continued university, number one, and had the degree in sociology, which I was looking for. I wish I'd have spent more time with my daughter when she was little, and I wish I'd have taken those piano lessons.
Do you recall a particularly challenging phase in your life and how you navigated it?
Wow, particularly challenging. Personally or professionally?
Can be either or.
I was hoping you'd say one or the other, and that would make it easier. Um,
Yeah, well, you know what? If you don't mind me making the choice, then let's go. Let's go personally.
um, I think it was. I think it was getting through the separation and divorce with my first wife, and maintaining a hold on my relationship with my daughter. I think that was probably the most personally challenging. Anything after that that might have been related to me personally became just a little easier, I think, because I think I managed to maintain a relationship with my ex-wife that kept alive my relationship with my daughter. So I think that was the most challenging. There are probably a number of other things personally, but that would probably be the most challenging, and perhaps had the most effect on the remainder of my life through to today.
And what are you most proud of in your life?
Sticking to something and seeing it through, I think. And I think the thing that I have stuck to and worked hard at has affected every aspect of my life. And that was just starting and sticking with the martial arts. That was a real physical and mental challenge for me, but I stayed with it. And I think I stayed with it mainly because some other people in the system expected that I'd be there. And rather than me sort of being the disciplined individual that could go off in a corner and be happy as hell doing stuff, I kind of felt, when I look back on it now, I kind of felt that my commitment to help other people work through their journey made my journey a lot easier. I stuck to my training in the martial arts, which started in 72, and it has not changed in terms of my attitude and my commitment, my time in, and the degree to which I worked. Because for 30 years, it was 3 times a week. We trained and we trained hard. I can't do that anymore, but you can do the same thing a different way and get equally as good results from it for you personally. So I think that would be the biggest in terms of my commitment over the long term that I stuck with would be the martial art. And that has affected absolutely everything else that I've done. Because that, I guess it is, they say it's a character builder, and it in fact is. Um,
as somebody who has not nearly practiced for as long as you, Michael, I think it's highly commendable and it's very impressive to keep that level of consistency and discipline. But to your point, there's something incredibly humbling about facing a belt grade higher than you and realizing that there's a long way to go and there's a lot of growth that can happen and I think that combined with the work ethic and the discipline absolutely has a positive effect in other aspects of your life, which is incredible. Then just kind of, touching towards the end, how would you like to be remembered?
I think I'd like to being remembered as a fun-loving guy and fun in a positive way. I think I like to remember it as someone who, if he said he was going to do something, that he in fact did it, and if he couldn't, it's because a rock fell on you and you're dead. I think I'd like to remember as someone who makes a commitment, keeps it. I don't know. I think that probably covers it because it goes back to me for. You go back for me when I said that one of the most important things that we all have going for us is the bottom line is our word. So if you give your word, you need to keep it. I think that if I want to be remembered as someone who enjoyed life, someone who was very supportive and friendly of people that were important to me, both professionally and personally, someone who is in process all your life. There are really no goals. There are just sort of short steps on the way. I'd like to be remembered as someone who, if I once said you need to become and not have, that I've worked hard at becoming me, whatever that is, and not just simply having stuff. I'm not a bad guy. I'd like to remember it as being not a bad guy. He was okay.
That's
He was
lovely.
fun.
He was fun. He was a fun guy. Well, I can certainly vouch for that, Michael. In this short podcast, this has been one of my favorite episodes thus far. I definitely see some overlap with how you grew up, the people that were involved in your life, and also a little bit about the freedom. And I think with a little bit of resiliency and a little bit of a life that maybe is not like the structured norm results in some of the most compelling and interesting characters that I've met. So I feel delighted to have the honor to share with you in some of your stories today. As we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share that we haven't touched on?
Well, firstly, this process was totally unexpected, but it's been very, very enlightening. I enjoyed this very, very much. You made it easy for me to talk and answer questions, so thank you. It was very comfortable. We touched on a lot, and if I go back as far as I can go back in my head, I can't think of anything that I would want to add that probably would come out or could come out if you spent hours doing this. But I'm happy to have had this opportunity. Although there are times when you say, why me? And why are things the way they are? Well, life's impersonal. When you get up in the morning, there it is presenting itself to you in the face, and you just deal with it. It's not out to get you. It's not personal. It's just this life. And you just deal with it on a day-to-day basis as it comes towards you, and you need to deal with it. You need to jump inside and deal with it, because quite often problems that you see as surmountable, once you jump inside and look around, you say, shit, this wasn't that tough. I can handle this just by focusing. So
I just want to again thank you, Michael. For me personally, you've dropped a lot of wisdom that I certainly resonates with me, and I'm sure many of our listeners. Thank you for taking the time to record your first audio memoir with us at AudioLife.
thank
You're an
you.
incredibly interesting
It's been
guy,
wonderful.
and it has been wonderful for me personally, and for some of our listeners. You've written some books, and I'd love to get a deeper dive into some of those stories. Is there one that we should check out first that you would recommend, or maybe one or two that you think, okay, those are the ones that might be the easiest to get into, or what would you say is a good starting place?
Each has its own message, I would think. The first one I wrote is just about my sister and I growing up over a period of 1948 to 1958 in small town Chatham, and all the stuff that I did. I said this in the book. I didn't want to give a historical perspective on Chatham. The book had to have a context, and that context was Chatham. So I did a bit of research on what Chatham was all about over the course of the 10 years that the book covers. So if you're looking for some insight into a kid's life and some of the things that they did, it's a memoir. It's an okay thing. The second book is, as I mentioned, just a collection of 30 years worth of notes that I just sort of took that note and expanded on it and talked about it. And I referenced a couple of things in our conversation that are in that book. So it's sort of a self-help thing. And it's not a book that you sit down and read. It may take you a year to get through it because if you read some of the stuff, you spend time thinking about it, I would hope. The third book is I hung out in this park as a kid in the summer my whole life. And I needed to write a story about just being in that park for the summer. So the story starts at the end of June in 1963, and I just kept on writing until I told everything that I wanted to tell about what I did as a kid. And it ended up 625 pages later being done when we went back to school 2 months later. So it's just a story of three guys hanging out, talking trash, Googling the girls, getting into fights, hitchhiking places, traveling to the lake, hassling some girls, going to parties, going to the show. That's all in there. And there's probably stuff in there that you may have actually done as a kid. It's a coming of age story, and it may just memory lane for some people. There's a couple of incidents in there involving getting to know an older girl sexually. They didn't happen. That's all in my head. The rest of the stuff actually happened. And the fourth book, when I was putting together the notes for my first book, I always asked my mother questions about my dad, who I never knew, and she would answer the questions, and I would make notes. And then one day, when I was finishing up my first book, I said, we were talking about something, and my mother said, you might as well have these. So she went to the bedroom and came back with this stack of letters wrapped in faded blue and pink ribbon. And there was about 220, 30 of these letters that my dad had written to her from before he went into the war, on the war's front, and up till the day he was killed, which was a week before the war ended. So I said, I've got to do something. So the fourth book I wrote was just a story about mom and dad, as much as I could recall and build around. And in there are 54 letters that are verbatim as he wrote them from his experience overseas. So it depends on what you're looking for. At least twice a week, I get a call from indie publishing companies or small on-demand publishing companies that want to take one of my books and do the world with it, but it's only going to cost me $2,000 in order to do this. And each time they call, they talk about a different book. I think the one that may be most informative would be the last book I wrote, and it's called Ducky, Life Letters, because that's how my mom and dad lived their life just after they got married. They lived it vicariously by letters written back and forth. That might be the most enjoyable. That might provide the most insight into, the life of someone who wasn't at home and wanted to be there, but was facing other challenges in life that the rest of the world was facing as well during World War II. So that might be one that you may want to look at more than the others. That's
awesome.
I don't know what else to say.
Oh, awesome, Michael. Thanks for that. I look forward to investigating some of those, and certainly your latest book and your efforts. If it's been anything near as thrilling as our conversation today, I'll be excited, and I'm sure we'll get talking again soon. So thank you, Mike.
Very welcome.
This has been AudioLife, the podcast where we tell your story in your voice. I've been your host, Ghafoor Masood. Michael Dymond, thank you for sharing your story.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
If you like what you heard today, consider recording your own AudioLife private podcast or giving one to a loved one for a unique and memorable gift. Today, AudioLife listeners will receive 10% off using discount code GIFT10 and order number AudioLife Podcast. Also, remember to rate our show and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode.